of personnel in our first set of the day, and that's a great start to their tournament here. And as expected, I think, for the SCC powerhouse over in EU. And so that was one of our first Group A matches. We'll have Group B and kind of bounce back and forth on throughout the weekend. And so that's the story, I think, of the first couple of sets here, is how can the top SCC teams do against the SOC teams? Can they really set the stage? We'll see what happens in this set. My name's Dolson. Myth is with me. And Myth, when the ultimate question ends up being here, do we expect the SCC teams, the top SCC teams, to be able to reprise these types of performances consistently throughout the weekend?
I expect this to be a much more competitive game, I
Right.
think. So maybe that's a roundabout way of saying, no, I don't think we're going to expect like another just, 25 minutes of combined gameplay.
Yeah.
I'm expecting this next set to go a bit longer.
We'll see how competitive the next one is. This is Group A. Remember, double elim groups to start off the weekend. Hex Mambo, very, very clean. Knock personnel down to the knockout match there in match number 5. So Hex Mambo await the winner of Styx Ferryman and Niflheim Wargs. And so that'll be a fun one to watch whenever we end up rounding out to that matchup. And so Hex Mambo, a real clear track forward here as far as progressing throughout this tournament and making their way to the group stages of Worlds, which will be happening early in January. And so Styx Ferryman, Niflheim Wargs already up against it here. That's a very, very close-knit matchup. We'll get to the rest of Group A later on. Now over in Group B, which is where our next matchup comes from, it's Highland Ravens versus Thunderhead, and then the Aru Scorpions and the Gilded Gladiators also in this group. Expectations there for the Aru Scorpions, but that matchup against the Gilded Gladiators really sets the tone on the other side here of EU. So Highland Ravens versus Thunderhead here, Myth. This is the number 2 EU SCC team up against the number 1 EU SOC team. So you're dropping down in the standings 1 in the SCC and jumping up in the standings 1 in the SOC department going into our second set of the day. So can Thunderhead, the number 1 EU SOC team, play more competitively than what we saw earlier on to start the day? This is a Thunderhead roster that has some talent behind it, a team I think that likes to play scrappy, but potentially able to catch their opponents off guard here, Myth. AC, Galadriel, Renegan, TheRayShadow, Mark, some names that SCC, I think fans will be familiar with, but really it's got to be about catching the Highland Ravens off guard in some type of way, right? I mean, the Ravens, such a consistent, holistic smite team. You got to bring something special out here if you're Thunderhead.
I think they're very capable of it, Thunderhead that is. We've got a couple of notable names, Galadriel, TheRayShadow, and ItzMarc in particular, names that I'm pretty familiar with, having had the opportunity to watch their play over the last couple of years. At times, they look incredibly strong. It seems as if to me that they've really leaned into their style of a bit more eclectic selections in gods and roles, like to play generally a bit more their own pace. But the one up that they have for them, the one advantage I think, is that the standard pace of this team's games, Thunderhead, is a bit on the faster side. When we look at the middle of the pack to lower end EU SCC teams, they generally fall into the trappings of very, very slow play, and they get caught off guard by the accelerated pace of Hex Mambo or the Highland Ravens.
Yep.
I think that Thunderhead, maybe not as adept at playing that pace as some of these high-seeded SCC teams, but certainly have much more experience in that role than some of their contemporaries.
TheRayShadow, the jungler for this Thunderhead team, I think absolutely a win condition for this squad. Doesn't mind some of those carry-style junglers that we just saw in that highlight reel. Unfortunately for TheRayShadow, you're going up against the Ravens and one of the greatest junglers to ever do it. You're going up against adapting on the Highland Ravens team. And it's not just adapting on this squad. The Highland Ravens, all phase long, we're a highly competitive team. They have win conditions through Coast and Silence in the duo lane. Angry, one of the best mid laners in the EU SCC. And then Kana in solo lane. Myth, a very, very consistent player. It's a highly threatening team. Also a team favored to make it out of groups.
Yeah, these guys have been very, very impressive throughout the regular phase. I think in particular, I've liked what I've seen from the guy on your screen right now, Angry. At times, strays away from the standard mid selections. I think of Kuang, I think of Tiamat, and I think of Thoth when I think of Angry, which is not exactly the standard, but certainly capable of playing those picks at the highest level and has done so consistently at every opportunity we've had to watch him. But VaporishCoast is also a name that I think you really need to evaluate when you talk about the strengths of this team.
Yep.
This guy, I would equate him to EU SCC Yarkor. He wants to play on your tower line, he wants to play aggressively, he'll solo invade your buff, and my man is laugh spamming on your corpse every single time. He's playing the mental battle like nobody else.
Adapting, also a lot of fun to watch here for this Highland Ravens team. Look, with how competitive the EU SCC was, no small feat getting second seed coming into this tournament. Hex Mambo looked like the picture of consistency. It was a battle for all of the remaining seeds. And I think the Highland Ravens being able to diversify their win conditions over the last couple of weeks was so important to them and their conquest here moving into the Road to Worlds and their chance to potentially also upset one of our SPL squads and move on to Texas. We'll see how these two teams choose to draft and prioritize in picks and bans for game number 1 as Thunderhead, the number 1 SOC team from EU, and the number 2 SCC team, the Highland Ravens, will battle it out. So you're favoring the Highland Ravens here. If you're Thunderhead, I do wonder, and maybe we had similar questions for personnel in our first set of the day. I mean, are you banning out Adapting? Are you banning out Coast? Remember, Coast's so strong on things like the Heimdall, but also has a decent god pool of gods that are maybe a bit more in the meta right now. Difficult question, because I think everyone on the Ravens capable of winning if they're given one of their favorite picks.
Yeah, I don't think you're exactly capable of banning out Coast. I'm not sure that it's possible to ban out Adapting. But if you were to target any individual player on the Ravens, I would probably consider Angry to be the target of those bans. If you can get him off the Tiamat, if you can get him off his standards, he has to fall back pretty far. I mean, it is like 70% of his game played on those 3 picks. So maybe throw him a bit off balance. Instead, though, it seems to me that Thunderhead has really just kind of leaned into the meta. Don't feel like playing against the Kepri, fine, Cupid set, both pretty standard bans at every level of play.
Ravens, a bit similar there as well. Yamoja gone, Dashi gone, as well as the Ishtar, who's maybe the strongest AD carry in the game right now. That leaves Cern open and been a catch-all type of pick. Remember, this leaves different options open. Could be over in the dual lane, also could be mid lane in a double ADC type of composition. And so flexibility for Thunderhead absolutely still there. I mean, a player god combo is about as historic as it gets. Adapting on Thor. And Myth, this looks like a Ravens team now with Chernobog as well. Global and semi-global presence and player god combos that have been written about in Smite history. They want to make a statement here in game 1.
I am praying for the fans at home and my just, enjoyment, my personal enjoyment of this match, that is Thor going to the jungle, because I love seeing Adapting play this pick. I've loved it for a decade,
Athena.
watching him play this pick. But I would be remiss to not bring up the fact that the Ravens do have some flex potential here. We've seen Thor pretty consistently out of the solo lane in the SPL. So we'll get a better idea of where that Thor's going to land as the draft rolls through. But it is still certainly a strong selection just for that flexibility to keep Thunderhead guessing as we move into the next phase of bans, so long as we don't get that clarification in this 3rd pick.
Yeah, the Ravens, yeah, you're right. I mean, Kana, absolutely a flexible solo laner, so it could be Thor solo.
Oh, we got it.
Won't be, it'll end up being Bellona solo for Kana. Thor then. So you've got a lot of big initiation already if you're the Ravens. You've got an Anvil of Dawn, the wall, of course, from the Thor. But now a big Eagles rally from Bellona can just force initiation upon Thunderhead. They've got an Amaterasu, which is able to answer that a bit. Wild Hunt for some lockdown, and then, of course, the taunts from Athena, very, very strong, one of the strongest abilities in the game. Do you think the top 3 from the Ravens now forces anything out of Thunderhead here, Myth, knowing that you've got this dive, this semi-global presence? Are you changing anything at the end of your draft?
Not exactly. I think you've already got a really good counter-engage from your Athena, that Defender of Olympus, making sure that utilizing that global presence from the Ravens is going to be a little bit more difficult to do. Generally, Chernobog jumps into a fight and says, all right, we're going to have the numbers advantage no matter what. Athena can keep it a bit more even in some of those engagements. I love what we've seen from Thunderhead so far, and even with the initiation stack from the Ravens, it's generally single target. Eagles rally, not consistently hitting multiple people. Thor dunks for the most part, probably hitting 2 consistently, but more than that's a bit hard to ask for. And even Fafnir now to round out that 3-man initiation. is a whole lot of single target CC as well. So when you look at Thunderhead, you can consistently find on 10-second cooldowns double confounds or dazzling offensive ease of execution in these engagements a lot higher as well. And now with a 9 turns blessing at that, I think Thunderhead have got themselves a much easier to play composition until this Merlin got locked in. I was about to bring up, when you have such phenomenal CC like this, such clear-cut, just A to B style of play, taunt to B being massive bit of burst. Merlin, not exactly the style of pick that I was hoping to see. Doesn't quite have that burst I wanted.
No, okay, so we saw probably worst case scenario for Erlang Shen in our last game, right? We talked about Erlang Shen falling a bit behind, and it looks bad, you know, when it's like a couple levels down, like maybe 5. A half item down. Yeah, I mean, it was nowhere close. So the lowest level in the game. Don't expect it to get that bad, but if the Ravens were able to force pressure and keep this Erlang Shen behind, so difficult to come back from that, especially against a Thor. Now, Baba Yaga, the Ravens' final pick here, Myth, that'll go to Angry over in the mid lane, add some scaling in here. And also sneaky, really, really good damage once you get some of those stacking items online, Book of Thoth, Warlock Staff. If you want to build that slower path, get sped up a bit because it's Baba Yaga.
Yeah, only slow because of cost of entry.
Right.
Generally pretty expensive items, but because of Baba Yaga's passive, the house giving you stacks, I think that is probably the only mage in the game that'll consistently be going towards Book of Thoth straight into Warlocks, and I think you'd be right to do it on the Ravens here. I actually generally really do enjoy how Baba Yaga fits into this composition as well. Getting that HP shield in the home sweet home allows you to kind of join that frontline dive. That is exactly what the rest of the Ravens are going to be doing, even including your ADC. Chernobog, for the most part, going to jump into the shadow of someone in the back line of Thunderhead. That would, for the most part, leave Baba Yaga alone in the back line, which would be a pretty easy dive for Thunderhead to lock on.
Yep.
Until she turns into a massive CC immune house, running you down with fire pools.
Well, Miff, you favor the Ravens just because of seeding going into this tournament. The Ravens need to make a statement here. We just saw what HexMambo did to one of the SOC squads. Can the Ravens do it as well? We'll go down to Gormizer and Trelly to find out.
Thanks so much, Dave and Mifflin. And yeah, it's Gore and Trelly. We jump into the second set here in Europe. The Ravens taking on Thunderhead. And Trelly, I'll be honest, there's probably a lot of fun things to talk about, and maybe even interesting topics. My brain stalls, though, just because I see adapting in Thor, and I don't really care about the rest. That's all I see. I hone in on it.
I don't think that's a problem. I also want to look at adapting on Thor, and I hope that he can just, relive the glory days with us. Hit some banger ultimates. I want to see those double taps absolutely swinging, that sort of thing, and I think our brain is just conditioned to look for those kind of plays when adapting is on the map and when he's playing Thor, because we've seen him play a lot of different assassins as of recent. It's very rare we get to see him actually pilot that Thor.
To the point where I think we were even talking about his Ratatosker, and worth mentioning his Ratatosker because it was going like 9-0. 3 or 4 games in a row.
Yeah.
Like anytime he got it, it was absolutely demolishing players. And the only reason I bring that up is because every single ult he had as Ratatosker, I would say, man, he's using it the same way he'd use a Thor ult. Like it was just the same style of play. And you have to imagine that semi-global presence is going to feel really solid. Does have maybe a little ways to go, like Baba Yaga, really good mage. Not really known for her early game. Might not be the biggest presence in a 2v2 that we get to see.
Yeah, I don't imagine that adapting's trying to fight through Angry in the early. Maybe let those stacks get online, but it looks like a little bit of a gank attempt here on VaporishCoast. Great route, though. Looks like he's going to have a little bit of space between him. The beats go down. I think he's going to be all right.
And RayShadow's so low, silenced. If the leap comes up, if he has the leap, that is, at level 2, maybe could have looked for something, but still beautiful. And even more, and you can talk about Shell being very helpful there, but that horrific, really good to help separate Ray from the rest of, well, from Coast mainly. Slow him down a little bit. You do still get the beads of your Thunderhead. Very active early game. You love to see it. Maybe not so much this Galadriel. Forced to fall back just because of how dangerous things can get. Athena, again, I said this earlier on the desk, but really, really telegraphed dash. Sometimes that channel time can really hurt you.
Yeah, good on Galadriel, though, to be able to find that escape point, because that's usually how it goes, right? You get one little opportunity when you're not being body blocked on that Athena dash to actually get out of trouble, and it's not easy to find, so great plays there. Still 0-0 in this game, but you can tell the Highland Ravens starting to pour ahead a little bit, farm-wise throughout the map, I believe they're going to be able to get just a little bit of extra pressure, clearing waves a bit faster, invading camps, that sort of thing. We did see adapting, stealing away a bit of RayShadow's jungle while that gank was going on left, and that's sort of the issue with going for an early gank over to duo lane. You're missing a lot of your buff spawns on the right side of the map, so back camps, things like that really do start to add up. But you did get VaporishCoast speeds down. You got another 80 seconds or so. If you're trying to set up a gank onto this Chernobog, it's got to be right now or in the next minute or so, or else you missed your opportunity.
Especially, I mean, you've got a taunt on the Athena, so you know that that's going to connect pretty consistently. But with RayShadow, now level 4 should be hitting level 5 soon enough. Like you said, maybe losing out on some of the experience you can see already. Technically, let's call it half a level down from where adapting's at. But I see 2 taunts on the lane and a guy with no beats for 50 seconds. Oh. I'm trying to hit level 5 as fast as possible. Speaking of level 5, here it is for Chnnahh and adapting, slamming down onto Mark. And there's only so much you can do when you've got a Bellona and a Thor chasing you. Mark tries to get out of there. That's a beautiful first blood there for Chnnahh.
Yeah, I thought maybe Chnnahh missing that Eagles rally was going to be the end of that gank, but I guess just enough CC as well as upgraded damage from that Anvil of Dawn when you're using that Berserker's Barrage and the rest of Thor's abilities were enough to guarantee that that kill went through. So first blood going to the solo laner. And as a Bellona into a team with so many auto attackers and the Ama, the Erlang, and the Cernunnos, you know, letting the Bellona get first blood really does stink, especially when that Scourge gets online, when Chnnahh can make those rotations in with the teleport, because ItzMarc not able to match that teleport. Had to get the beads as well. It's going to hurt that team fight later on.
Well, level 6 to 4, now just now hitting 5 for Mark. I mean, that is a true level lead that we get to see. And not often does that happen. Maybe needing a match from Ray on the other side. A really good read by adapting. And you can see, and you know, we had this conversation towards the end of Phase 3 for the SPL, a little bit in the SCC as well. There was a lot of solo side focus early on in these games, whether it was for Scorpions or Totem of Ku, or in more instances than not, just straight up stripping away the back camps, any kind of opening that you could get. It was usually opened on the right-hand side. Now, with Gold Fury starting to spawn up, we might start to see some left-hand focus, especially because the last time we saw any of these teams play, it was before the 9-10 patch that made that Gold Fury a lot easier to kill off. And so maybe some early oriented focus and some left-side shift coming in for the Ravens soon.
Yeah, good bit of call. The Highland Ravens are starting to get aggressive on the right
They immediately ran right.
Yeah, possibly just trying to take that greater Scorpion. It looks like that was what their eyes were after. I mean, they've got decent DPS. RayShadow blinks it. Beautiful taunt there.
Yeah, double taunt. Get some good CC silenced. It's a little low. Up into the air right now. Is adapting. Looks like they're just going to opt to fall back. Clean up their own Greater Scorpion. Farm things off. Not play too risky. Really good engage from Thunderhead. But you can see matched ult for ult. And pretty much every single step of the way. And I'll throw Merlin in that instance as well. But even though his was just a nice little stand switch to get some burn out there.
Yeah, RayShadow with the beautiful blink, 9 turns blessing, was able to pull the beads off of adapting. Anvil of Dawn down. Maybe an opportunity to get aggressive towards this. Thor has been having pretty much free reign in the jungle. Could be something to look after here, but ItzMarc really taking a beating as well from Chnnahh. Remember, Chnnahh got that early lead, was able to finish that Berserker shield, whereas Mark doesn't even have that Golden Blade online. Not able to match that same amount of pressure in this lane. So I think Chnnahh playing to the strengths of Bellona very well, trying to find those boxing matches, and also setting up for a possible blue buff invade. Mark not quite back now, but you can see Galadriel also on the way to make sure that blue buff does not get taken away.
Yeah, playing, again, defensively, and well done, because Chnnahh was going to continue to push that with Mark having backed. If Ray's not there, if there's not a rotation from the Athena, that's some free experience, and you're already talking about someone that was pretty far ahead and still has a decent lead in Chnnahh, but it is not as grandiose as it may have been earlier. I'm surprised to see, I mean, not necessarily foot off the pedal for the Ravens, but a little bit of a slowdown for him, right? And I think a lot of it is going to be oriented, adapting just now, getting his ult back. Chnnahh just now using his ult, trying to get aggressive. Double tap, not on point for adapting.
A rare miss.
A rare miss. He hit only one of them. So now he's going to have to fall back. And unfortunately for the left-hand side of the map, means he's going to show up over there.
Yeah, you love to see Coast getting this aggressively. Galadriel makes the rotation over, trying to help out with that purple buff. No more aggression coming towards the Chernobog. But, you know, Coast is one of these players that is going to find a way to play aggressive no matter the character. And Chernobog especially, one of those gods that you don't think wants to take these 1v1 trades usually. If you can poke someone out, back, fly in with that Nightmare ultimate, and then find the fight, that's a time that a Chernobog can get aggressive. But Coast is just invading purple buffs into a Cernunnos, one of the most aggressive ADCs we have currently over in that duo lane. Can even flex to mid just because of how much clear and how much 1v1 potential this character has. And Coast is still stepping up with no fear. I mean, Athena has that ultimate, could join in a second. And I think that's the reason that Coast has that much safety in his kit. You know, he can go up into the ultimate stall, hide in the wall, all sorts of things. Galadriel dashes in, misses the taunt. RayShadow's here as well. I don't know if they're going to be able to find anything.
Yeah, good try, like you said, but once that first taunt misses, second taunt never even comes out from RayShadow. And so they have to slow roll that one back away, adapting. It's back on the right-hand side of the map. Blue buff is going to be spawning in. Double tap's good this time. Forces the health pot from the Erlang Shen. That's going to be a leap forward from Kana. Locked down, and the damage is there, but with the Athena here, it's going to be enough to peel away. Now, things turned around. Ravens maybe losing a little bit of the numbers advantage, adapting, choosing a different target, uses the ult, uses the wall, and is chasing down this Merlin, but just shy. There's the shot from Angry, and that's all they need to get the second kill.
Yeah, unfortunate there for Renegon. Once you use the bees and your flicker, doesn't really matter what else you can do. Adapting, hit the hammer. Wasn't able to find the double tap, but Angry had plenty of damage on the Baba Yaga to make sure to clear that one. So the second kill going the way of the Ravens, but they've already built up themselves a 2,000 gold lead just by better farming and buff invades, things of that nature. Make sure you're keeping your eye on the relics as well. I think there's a big opening here to get aggressive once those ultimates come back up. Not for Thunderhead, for the Ravens. I mean, so much aggression is going to net a lot of beads cooldowns. And Coast was able to grab that purple buff as well. There's just no farm that Thunderhead are able to confirm for themselves.
It's an unfortunate spot to be in. I mean, you know, you're talking 2 kills, but 2,000 gold, right? It is manifested elsewhere. The Greater Scorpion not feeling that safe. Mark should not be feeling safe at all. What a great wall from adapting. And when there are 4 Ravens that are swarming you that way, not too much you can do about it. Galadriel, at this point, is getting out by the merits of being a tank. This side of the jungle belongs to the Ravens.
Certainly does. That Pyromancer just spawned back in, so maybe something for the Ravens to look towards once they get a little bit more DPS, possibly when Kana finishes that Shillelagh into the Sledge or Blackthorn Hammer, whichever one we're going to go towards. Could help with a little bit more auto attack damage, but Thunderhead recognized the right side pressure, and they're going to pull the gold here. You know what? From the Ravens are around here, this should be free.
Yeah, the Merlin burn does a lot of work there, Coast. Maybe spots it a little too late. I don't even know if he spotted it. I think he might have just been going for the interceptor now that I'm looking at where he was. Maybe they just don't care. You get a Gold Fury like that, normally it is the great equalizer in the game. Pyromancer, though, started up by the Ravens. And with the gold lead they already had, even losing the Fury, this is going to help pull them even further ahead. Although, Trelly, it's not, you know, outrageous. I mean, you look towards where the items are. For the most part, they're matching. In fact, technically, and maybe it's just belayed backs from the Ravens, but there are actually some small leads on the side of Thunderhead, just because there's a tier 3 and maybe some spots where there's tier 2s on the other side.
Yeah, build-wise, being able to go back in this case, I think Angry has been just power farming the map ever since the Pyromancer just going around trying to get as much as possible. You can see iSilenced heading over to this purple buff once again, trying to zone out RayShadow and not let this buff go down. You gotta feel bad for AC. He's not gonna be able to confirm this buff pretty much ever. And now Galadriel definitely gonna fall here. That ultimate, not gonna be enough. That Defender of Olympus, that channel time is a little bit too long. If you can do it before the aggression comes through, maybe you make it out. But in the face of 3, not gonna be able to get out in that situation.
And it's you listen to it. I mean, that's, even though it feels incredibly close, it still probably had like a half second, full second that he had to wait. Unfortunate position to get caught out in. Red buff not stolen away by the Ravens, but they're stealing pretty much anything else they can. RayShadow stunned under tower, saved by the fact that Galadriel did not have that ult consumed earlier. So a little bit of experience still going the way of Thunderhead, but with the pressure that is being exuded on the map, save for the Gold Fury, it has been an overwhelming Ravens game so far.
Yeah, certainly has, because both neutral objectives are gone. That's probably all the aggression we're going to see for the time being. I mean, no beats, timer's down, so adapting doesn't have that easy target to try and force out fights. I like the fact that Thunderhead hasn't just sat by idly, though. They did force that Gold Fury when they realized there was a lot of right-side map pressure.
Good reads.
They're not just sitting back, right? Despite the fact that they are pretty far down gold-wise, and especially kill-wise, they're not stopping to get proactive. They are looking for making plays. They try to defend their own purple buff. Unfortunately, the Ravens just brought a little bit too much to the party, but they're still looking for their opportunities to come back into this game. They've got some decent late game as well. We already highlighted the amount of auto attackers they have. This Merlin, I think that if you can get some more items online, a Soul Reaver would go a long way as well. I think they've got some opportunities. It's just going to take a bit before they actually can take a true 5v5.
I mean, we've seen leads larger than this in the SBL plateau, right? So it's definitely something Thunderhead might be able to take advantage of. Good ult by Mark. It voids the stun from Kana, but is it going to avoid the dunk from Adapting? Not even going to connect. Kana gets the kill before Adapting can come crashing down. And unfortunately for the solo laner, 3 of the 5 deaths for Thunderhead. And that one, admittedly, is going to put it at his doorstep. Mark stepped into the Ravens territory. We've been seeing how that has gone for him.
You tell me Mark thought he had an opportunity to proxy when he's down this far? I don't think so. Looks like going for some poke into mid lane. Galadriel goes in for the dash taunt immediately into Home Sweet Home.
I mean, the damage should be there in turn. Angry, doing so much to Rinnegan. It's just about safety right now for Adapting. Gets out of there thanks to the hammer. Some damage and a rotation from Coast. Almost able to find a kill under the tower. Doesn't matter, his team picking up some of the slack. Finds TheRayShadow just off the shoot of mid lane. And immediately into a tier 1. Adapting never slowed down. Goes for the steal. And is spending a lot of time in the jungle finding success.
I was wondering if the Ravens were going to go pull fire. I mean, they had that Draconic transformation, and pretty much everyone rotated over, but Adapting and Coast went back over to left lane. They were more interested in the farm rather than the objective. It is still extremely early. This lead is big, but I don't know if it's 15-minute Fire Giant big. So probably the smart call there, just to back up. Silence looked like he was trying to force a kill onto ItzMarc, but doesn't have too much damage. I mean, Kana online, surely. Whew. A little bit off the mark there with Anvil of Dawn. That's to be just fine, but both lanes are being aggressed upon by the Ravens, left lane and right lane. But everything turns up Thunderhead that time. No relics from AC. Was able to juke out that Anvil of Dawn, and Kana got his, ItzMarc got the blue buff, so all good things for Thunderhead there. I mean, small wins.
Small wins.
Yeah.
That's actually exactly what I was saying.
You got to celebrate the small wins.
Well, and because the small wins are what get you to the big wins, right? They got that Gold Fury earlier.
Yep.
You get some of the things right here. Adapting doesn't have his ult for a little while. All of a sudden, there's a Fury that's up on the map again. Thunderhead, maybe in a unique position to force something out of the Ravens despite the deficit. Sometimes, Trilly, we see that not go so well, though, right? It's that keen balance that you have to find. It doesn't seem like Thunderhead are going to find it here because Ravens walk up to the Oni Fury, start it. Not a soul in sight from the other side. They're going to be able to secure that one no problem. A little bit of farm stealing from Thunderhead on the back camps on the right. And some proxy going on by Mark. Hopefully he gets out of there before Adapting gets over there. We've seen it go the way that it could. It's a Pyromancer start for the Thunderhead.
And Silence as the wraparound here. It looks like the only steal attempt at the time being, but Adapting also on the way, trying to stall out Thunderhead. And here comes the rest of the Ravens. They're all arriving here.
Damage should be good. Leap forward from Kana immediately. Isolate Shadow. Shadow uses the heal. Dunk gonna find a stun, but it's deep on the mark. They're chasing the kill. Adapting gets that one. Shadow walk away with his life, but his solo laner pays the iron price. And now with Fire Giant started up, Trelly, it's what you wanted to see earlier, but maybe and then some. Now, maybe appropriate timing, appropriate gold, appropriate lead. And with a zone like this, nothing to worry about. It's a free Fire Giant for the Ravens 17 minutes in.
Yeah, I did a little once over there to check where everyone from Thunderhead was, and no one was close. So I'm pretty sure they knew exactly what was going on this side of the map and decided they probably couldn't step up. And I think I echo those sentiments as well. Looking at the level lead, looking at the itemization, it's just a little rough here for Thunderhead. Trying to set up a gank onto Adapting, though, seems to be the call. Easy pre-beats and hammer out, though. The King's not going to get caught sleeping that easily, but it looks like they're still diving. Yeah,
they're going to go for it. You're under the tier 2, though. Adapting is at least going to trade one for 1 in a 3-man gank. Meanwhile, what's the team up to? Oh, they're pushing the right-hand Phoenix like it's nothing. The Ravens leading the way here. Mark already have health. Phoenix gonna go down. They don't want any more than that. Silenced. Rest of the crew jump back. I think they got the tier 2 there as well. A lot of gold in their pocket, plus now a massive map advantage. And still 3 minutes on the power play to work with.
Yeah, I don't hate that call from Thunderhead, though. I mean, losing the Phoenix, that stinks. And, of course, TheRayShadow dying underneath the tower also stinks. But you're sort of in a position where you have to make calls like that to try and get back into this game. Forcing the pick onto adapting that shutdown gold, also going to be pretty massive. So the Thunderhead, you know, they can use a little bit of that gold to try and get back into this game. But losing that right side bird, that's a bit unfortunate. This early on, when Highland Ravens don't have that much itemization to put into Phoenix Siege, I think defending underneath the Phoenix 5v5 might have been a better look for them, but because so many of the Thunderhead roster was just stuck back near that tier 2, because it took so long to actually kill this Thor with both relics up, ended up losing that right side bird. And now, time for the Ravens to group up, spend all that gold, get some massive power spikes here, and group up towards the left side of the map with a Trebuchet. You can tell Thunderhead want this red buff, but it looks like Silence and Angry are going to let this one go. They weren't there quite in time. Silence didn't know that it was going to spawn in just yet.
It says something about the state of the game that you're trepidatious about getting your own red buff.
Yeah.
I mean, that was worry. I could feel it tantalizing in the air. I mean, it was there for Thunderhead. And maybe rightly so. Not only have they lost the right Phoenix, both towers now and left gone. Trebuchet, as you highlighted, on its way. And they're not even waiting for it. They just walk into the Phoenix. Cxnnahh is leading the way. He's got a 2-level lead for solo lane. Level 19 in 19 minutes. It does seem to eat a little too much damage. Angry throws out some shots in home sweet home. Phoenix is half health. TheRayShadow gets aggressive. TheRayShadow gets stunned and almost taken out, but the heal from the 9 turns blessing just enough to keep him alive and get him to safety. The Phoenix, though, cannot say the same. The last shots from the Ravens do exactly what they need, and they get the second bird of the game.
This is the first Fire Giant. Remember, there's only 1 minute left on this buff, and 2 Phoenixes have dropped before 20 minutes into this game. That is what you would expect, though, from the Highland Ravens. They love this aggressive playstyle now. Grouped up in mid lane is going to be the call. They do have that Draconic Transformation as well as Coast Ultimate, but that's not too much to try and use. You can see Thunderhead, they're stepping up. They want to stall out this Fire Giant if possible. 40 seconds left and the dash taunt in.
That's a good taunt on the Coast. Coast eats a lot of damage in the process, but no, it's turned around. Rinnegan eats his life, goes down, and now it's a chase. Cxnnahh jumps into the tower. Cxnnahh, with no worries for his own life, just chases in and helps his team take anyone down. Double kill for the Ravens. They've taken out 3. They've taken out 4. They're going to clean it up as the Deicide with fire minions pouring in the right-hand side. They take game number 1 in a convincing fashion.
They did, but adapting dying twice, I don't know, man. This guy's kind of washed up. You're telling me Thor dies twice in this game? Didn't even use Aegis there. Just
people call him the king.
Jokes aside, he still looked pretty clean on the Thor.
Really one of those deaths was a 3v1.
Yeah, turns out he still got it. You know, jokes aside, dying a few times when you're going that aggressive, I think it makes sense.
In a 3v1, he died, but he also got a kill.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think it comes out in his favor still. Yeah, no, the Ravens just look good, as it turns out. A lot of fun, I think, for them. Maybe a little bit of work to do if you're on the other side. Thunderhead trying to clean things up as we move into game number 2. They've got a little bit to do, so we'll kick it to a quick break, and then we'll be right back.
And the cosplays that we'll see there, very, very cool, very, very important as well. So make sure, if you've got a cosplay, you want to show it off, you want to enter our contest, there's a $9,000 prize pool at our 9th annual Smite World Championship cosplay contest. It'll be live at Worlds, so if you're at home, make sure to tune in for that because it'll be awesome. If you're going to Worlds and you have a cosplay you want to show off, make sure to head to smitegame.com/SWC for more information on how to enter and how to participate in our 9th annual cosplay contest with a chance at some of our $9,000 prize pool for that event. So game number 1 here on the Highland Ravens, breaking this one down. It's simply convincing here, Miff. The Highland Ravens play their game, personnel drop adapting a couple times, but it's, Thor going in. Sometimes you get caught out, sometimes it doesn't work out. We saw the surrender vote go up, didn't go through, but gives you a pretty good idea of the way game 1 went.
Yeah, I actually really liked what Thunderhead was able to accomplish throughout the early game. I felt as if they were matching pace really well.
Yeah.
Sure, kills weren't exactly in their favor, but up until like the 10-minute mark, they had kept that gold lead within a 2K range, which is generally acceptable, especially considering how strong Thunderhead's late-game team fight would have been. But the Highland Ravens, almost at that 10-minute mark, essentially said, hey, there's now POIs on the map that we could force pretty reliably. We can group up on Pyromancers and Gold Furies and force Thunderhead's hands in a lot of these engagements. And Thunderhead, we're not shying away from too many of those fights. Maybe should have, considering how quickly things started to balloon out of control. From 8 minutes to 16 minutes, the gold lead tripling or quadrupling at times. But this is just one where the Highland Ravens, I think, win the game off individual plays. It wasn't as if there were a whole lot of team fights, a whole lot of drag down, knockout battles that we got to see. It was, hey, Adapting found a pick on the Thor dunk, or a great Fafnir hammer set up for Angry's combo. And from there, it really simplified how to approach the rest of the match. Thunderhead, I think, can at least look at the first 8 minutes and say, we executed well on this. Let's try and play this area of the game again similarly, but let's make some adaptations as we approach that 10-minute mark.
I think important to note as well, not only from our first set, but now here in set 2, it's the SCC teams that have junglers that are very, very good at forcing fights. The Thor can force a fight with the Anvil of Dawn. We're ahead. We're able to compound on that lead. And so the Highland Ravens play around adapting a good bit here in this game. And you like those damage numbers, right? Nobody pulling far and away ahead. Kana adapting, Angry, VaporishCoast all getting involved with one another. And Silenced had a very nice KDA in game 1 as well, not dying and assisting basically everything that went on. Adjustments are always difficult to find, especially when a game is as lopsided as that. It ends up maybe, Miff, being a question of, do we try to draft more pressure for Thunderhead? Do we see if we can really outswing the Highland Ravens in the early game? Because I'm not sure the SOC against the SCC matchup that we've seen at least to start the day and now here in game 1 of this set, I'm not sure we're getting to late game. I don't know if scaling compositions are going to be it for the SOC teams.
But when you look at some of the pieces of Thunderhead's draft in game 1 that weren't really succeeding, I think you go to the Erlang Shen.
Yeah,
and
sure.
You don't really beat Erlang Shen early. Maybe
Sure.
you can make an argument, hey, Osiris with mannequins, at least as good or maybe a bit better. But
Do you want to see Jank?
I want to see Jank.
Are we at that point now where we're pulling out the crazy stuff to give yourself a chance? You think you have to catch the Highland Ravens off? Are you thinking we're mechanically outmatched to the point where it's got to be just the strangest composition that's worked a couple of times in scrims? A Hail Mary type comp?
Not necessarily. I think you could draft maybe some picks that are a little bit out of pocket, but as far as entire compositions, I don't think very often that the all-in on let's all just do what we want has generally worked in the past.
No, it could be a cohesive mindset, but all of it
is off meta.
Yeah. That's the cohesion.
Yeah. As long as you're all on the same page, be it the right one or the wrong one, as long as it's the same, I think, there's some value to that.
We win together, we lose together.
No, we're losing together.
Unfortunately for the SOC teams, that's been the case now in 3 straight games. Bans remain unchanged at least through the first 5. Again, I don't know if there's one individual ban suddenly from game 1 the Highland Ravens need to have taken away. Maybe if there is one, it's the Thor. Far from Adapting's only strong pick out of the jungle. There are plenty of options that Adapting can go to force those types of fights. and keep this game aggressive and flowing through the jungle. So won't be a Thor for adapting. Will have to be something a bit different.
Almost time to
Maui
start
really
the
good
show.
at forcing fights, and so you give that to Silenced suddenly, and there's already some aggression built up for the Ravens.
I'm excited to see Maui. Any opportunity to see Maui, especially as we gear up for Worlds at the competitive level, I think great for just data entry. I just want to see more from this pick because we know he brings immense CC, phenomenal initiation, ranged initiation, which is so valuable for a lot of the really meta selections with your Mojo with the Riptide or any sort of ranged pull, very, very valuable. Maui's got 4 of them, as well as a Heavenly Agility built into his kit, as well as a Leap Stun. So plenty of ways for him to make sure that the team fight is plenty disrupted. But the weakness of Maui is that he does not defend himself very well. So we'll see whether or not Thunderhead's able to exploit that in the early game, try and jump on him maybe. There are avenues to deal with this guy. And I'm excited to see whether or not, these guys have really figured out how to do it. We haven't seen the SPL find a consistent answer just yet, but I'd argue SCC and SOC a bit more inventive in their metas.
Yeah, they kind of are all swinging for their own personal fences. They don't have this one SPL style meta to fit into. I was going to ask, because we haven't really seen it build up yet. I was wondering if maybe throughout the course of this weekend and next weekend in North America, we would see kind of our own individual microcosm meta here in the SEC, SOC, or if it was going to end up trending back towards the SPL. We've seen a lot of standard picks, I think, from the SPL this weekend, but also a bit different here in a handful of these games. The Morrigan, that raises some eyebrows potentially, but as tried and true a comp as you get here, Miff, you get a Cthulhu, so you're limiting that early game a bit, but come team fight time, double Cthulhu.
You can say Cthulhu.
Cthulhu, no, I nearly did, and I pulled myself back. Double Cthulhu, not easy to deal with. You're looking at Shred, you get a bit of it with Cupid, you're hoping Amaterasu can get there. But I like Thunderhead here. They're drafting themselves one of the strongest team fight compositions there is.
I mean, top 3 from Thunderhead, no notes. Like, that's great. Double Cthulhu, obviously amazing. Ishtar, one of the most consistent hunters in the game right now, has great pressure as well. And another team fight ultimate to really play into the strengths of your draft already. I think Thunderhead have come away with a very strong top 3 selection. But I do want to echo your concerns. In a game where the 9-minute mark seemed to have dictated the rest of the match in the previous game of this set, going towards a composition that now has seen a bit of nerfs towards the early game, the Morrigan in particular, not exactly as strong in base stance as she once was, Cthulhu pretty consistently throughout every meta, regardless of how good he is in-game, not exactly good in the laning phase. So plenty of avenues for the Ravens to play through in the early to leverage their own aggression.
Arise,
but maybe a silver lining for Thunderhead.
Whoa.
Kuang locked in, Tiamat locked in as well. Not exactly early picks. Could buy Thunderhead the time they need to get to some of those later game team fights.
Give me a little Tiamat breakdown, if you will, here, Miff. This was the mid lane pick that was up there in pick rate. One of the most picked gods for a little while. Received some changes. Now on the fringes of pick rate in the SPL. Do not get to see it often, if really at all. Now locked in here for the Highland Ravens. I imagine there's still burst damage. There's still map pressure available with the spawning of the minions, things like that. Does Tiamat surprise you a bit here for the Ravens?
I think Tiamat is still a very good mage. We've been long removed from the Tiamat every game meta, but what she brings to the late game is such an insane amount of clutter to team fight that it's actually pretty hard to maneuver around her.
Yep. When
there's minions spawned up, or tornadoes around there, Primordial Onslaught shooting off 7 shots, stuns in the map as well, makes it very difficult to really lock down how you want to approach this pick, and that's one of the strengths of her.
Carries a lot of weight. We'll see if the SCC can start their weekend 4 for 4 with Gormizer and Trelly.
It's going to be a fun one to see what these teams have in offer. And Trelly, they're playing a couple, well, I guess at this point just a few days early. Next Tuesday is what I had in mind. We saw in patch notes just yesterday with a small Ao Kuang buff that's going to be coming. And the first thing I said when I heard about it was, oh, so we're buffing adapting.
Yep.
And he might give us a show why, but as the desk said, might take a little bit to get there.
Yeah, I'm just excited to watch Ao Kuang in general. I think one of the most interesting junglers to watch, especially about level 5. You can go over towards solo lane. You can go over towards, support these tanks that usually have to shred through so much of their HP to find a kill on. That execute threshold really does come in clutch. And you can tell then neither one of these tanks actually decide to get beat, so there's going to be an opportunity there. I think Galadriel getting the sprint, maybe to try and run away from that pressure, maybe try to run away from Coast's ultimate, that sort of thing does start to add up, but ItzMarc does have that CC immune ultimate if he wants to try to immune that execute from adapting. Either way, a lot of damage that can come from this Kuang pick as well. Interesting to see how he pilots it, especially once he gets some more burst damage on long.
I think also need to be worried. I mean, we've highlighted the Kuang very solid, and admittedly, I think the follow-up that he's going to have, the execute, is massive. I'm just thinking of easy lineup targets, not just for the Cupid, which we saw what that could do earlier, but for the Maui pulls, things like this. A nice little stun. Maybe there could have been a little more damage there. Ghost backs off, though. A little low on health. I was thinking, though, with the Maui, the pull, you get the Cupid. You eventually get a late-game Tiamat. You get the Kuang. It feels like, at this point, Silenced, you know, we've seen what Maui can do. His damage might be low, but the presence that he will bring in-game is going to be massive with the backline he has.
Yeah, I would say so. They've got just a ton of setup, especially with that dazzling defensive once Cxnnahh can make that rotation in. Good damage coming from ItzMarc. This Amaterasu takes a bit to come online, takes a bit before you're clearing the wave. You can tell Mark trying to bully as much as possible in the meantime. Wouldn't be surprised if Khan does go back and split the HP, but now looks like Silence is going to take a lot of damage.
Yeah, gets up onto the swing, uses the sun to get on out of there. Dangerous game they were playing, though. I mean, that was flirting with death. Was into it for a little bit, but does eventually cut things off. Just goes back home. I don't know where that analogy's going. It's off the rails there. And so we'll just jump back into it with very standard, and it feels weird to say this, but just very standard splits right now. I look up at the map. I see a junglers at their speed buff. I see duo lanes at purple. Everything was right in the world. Nobody was trying to invade. Nothing crazy was going on. I think that's kind of where the Ravens have put themselves. Last game, I mean, at this point, we had seen adapting start to show face over on the solo side of the map. And feels like their draft has slowed them down a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're looking towards late game with the Tiamat, you're looking towards late game with the Kuang, but I do think once you have that level 5, there's opportunities to find ganks, right? TheRayShadow also doesn't have the bead, so if you want to take that 1v1, I think adapting, as long as he's able to use that water illusion to juke out at least one of the Susano abilities, you should be just fine there. Once again, though, Galadriel taking a bit of damage, gets the beads out of AicyD. Looks like AicyD trying to find the kill, but misses the jolt.
Just off the mark where it's necessary. Sprint does go down, so maybe there's a small opening there. Silenced, though, with a very small stun in the early game, pulls the beads, and, you know, you would think, at least in my mind, it feels like the hook is going to be something that grabs that. But not this time. Kana goes into the ult, looks for a stun. Mark answers back with CC immunity of their own, adapting. Maybe playing a dangerous game, tries to get some extra damage out there, see if they can get Mark into a health threshold where a nice ult from the jungler could maybe execute through the Cthulhu after the Descent into Madness times out. But unfortunately for him, just not enough room over there in the short lane to make things happen.
It was a good time to gank. I think ItzMarc hit level 5 right as that dazzling offensive was about to stun, so pretty clutch timing there. Put the point into the ultimate and was able to go into that CC immunity, so adapting didn't have the opportunity to try and go for that execute, and Kana couldn't go for the stun. But now a blue buff invade is coming through. Galadriel on the way as well. Goes down, though, pretty effortlessly there for adapting. It looks like no more follow-up. Kana gonna be pretty happy about that one. I was wondering, Ganesh rotates all the way over to right for blue, and now you're losing purple buff in the process unless AicyD can walk up, and it looks like will not be able to, so failed an invade attempt on the right side of the map and losing purple buff on the left. Once again, Highland Ravens should be able to pull ahead just a little bit off of that early aggression. And especially with that ultimate down, I wouldn't be surprised if Adapting comes back over to right to try and gank ItzMarc, and look where he is now, right next to that right lane.
They have been missing, and you know what, I might have to hold this thought. Something serious in the game might actually happen here. Mark caught out by Adapting. Damage is there, stun should be good. Execute threshold up into the air, and first blood for the jungler. Surrender vote gets thrown out there. That one has to just be the small salty Mark gets ganked more than anything.
I think we've all had that surrender vote, right?
I'm out of here.
Where you're just like, where's my jungler, man? I'm out of here. Like that. That happens to the best of us. You're like, hey, sorry guys, don't actually click that. I'm just tilted. That just goes to show what forcing Descent into Madness can actually bring later on. It's a long cooldown on that ultimate, and once you get that execute in, adapting, gonna get off to a great start.
You know, on that note, I actually have the surrender, you know, the box that shows up when it surrenders. I have that hidden on my HUD because it tilted me so much when I saw that box show up.
Not even you clicking, like your teammates clicking it?
Yeah, anytime if the surrender box comes up, I can see it in chat. Blink has started a surrender vote, but I don't want the timer. I don't want it on my screen, on my face. Maybe that's something that the Thunderhead has going on, depending on how often Mark hits that one. Just a little fun over in solo lane specifically for adapting more than anybody. Mark. Not in the spot maybe you'd want to be for a Cthulhu. Although Cthulhu, like, it's such an interesting thing for a Guardian. Because it's not like you're going to, like, suffer dramatically from that death. You're still a Guardian. It is that execute that makes things so troublesome. And he steals away the blue buff. Yeah, never mind. Mark's just fine.
Yeah, he's like, all right, guys, F7. We got this one now. I stole blue buff away. Dapping tried to help and confirm. Was not able to, and a little bit of pressure over towards that side of the map. But now Coast could be in some trouble here. Recognize TheRayShadow's on the way. Beautiful, though. Didn't get hit by the jet stream. Chuked out that pole, and it's going to be just fine. I really thought at least a relic would go down towards this Cupid.
Coast doesn't feel fear.
Not afraid at all.
Yeah, that look, he's pentakilling people when he's like 13. He has no fear in his heart. Maybe only malice at this point. We might see. Not the item, though, but
no, hopefully not.
Damage-wise, things like that.
We haven't even brought up the fact that Coast pentakilled Mifflin yet. We usually do every single time he plays.
I'm glad that you were able to find a way in for that one, that Coast pentakilled Mifflin. There, we hit a quota, right? One for last game, one for this game.
Our caster Mifflin, Coast pentakilled, is that what you're saying?
That is what I'm saying. And what was funnier is that it was back when the computers were literally like 5 feet across from each other. So, like, his feet couldn't even touch the ground from where he was sitting, man. They were dangling around. He was kicking them. It was fun.
And that was in Miff's prime, too.
I heard the door behind me. I thought Mifflin was walking into the room.
I thought it was Miff, too. Yeah, but Coast, a seasoned player. That's what we're trying to get at.
He's been around for a while. At this point, at least for minor league, right? If you take out SPL, and I guess technically even if you include SPL, as far as a single player goes, I believe he has racked up the most pentakills across his career.
Wow. Competitively.
Granted, and you know, there's always that caveat, and people you can argue over it if you want to. The SCL, SML, Challenger Circuit, wherever it happened to be, he's still got all of them. It's a hard thing to do in any sort of standardized play. And when you're on a team with names like Kana, with adapting, especially Angry, then you know you have to have pretty high performances, and Coast has always been a very simple staple for this squad.
Silence, use that landfall ultimate, but AicyD was able to immune it. Wanted to get the beads there, but not going to be able to. But once again, Thunderhead with an early pull onto this Gold Fury. The Ravens are onto it this time, though.
They're going to be able to show up. Fields of Love get dropped down. Thunderhead do secure the Gold Fury, but can they get out of here? Galadriel's low. Stun not going to connect from Silence. Good knock-up from Angry. And it's going to be support for Fury. Thunderhead more than happy to make that trade.
They are going to be happy to take that trade, but who's going to get caught out by adapting here? It looks like TheRayShadow is onto this call, so probably he's going to retreat away, but now Renegon is going to stun out here, and now it looks like Adapting might be getting turned on.
Yeah, in danger, Renegon gets aggressive, Adapting low, has to dash away, use the ult for peel. But you have a nice team around you, Silenced, Angry, enough damage, enough presence from the Maui and the Tiamat to make sure that nobody's going to follow up. Adapting gets on out of there, still no kills for Thunderhead, but with the Fury, they close the gap. Sub 1,000 gold separating the two teams. Keep themselves within the conversation a lot more than they were at 9 minutes last game.
Yeah, that was a great play by Adapting, though. Using that ultimate for the CC immunity, did not want to get stunned out, as well as using that mystical Alua from Silenced to get himself out of trouble, using that bubble to make sure that he didn't get caught out there as well. Now, we're going to go back to looking at that gold lead we've been talking about. Because the Fury goes down, only 1,000 in favor of the Ravens. Not going to be the biggest deal in the world, and I think Thunderhead 2 games in a row have been able to show that map presence, right? On the left side of the map, just knowing, hey, we probably got a chance to pull here. Fields of Love was close, but not able to take that Fury away. Now ItzMarc is going to rotate in and try and get aggressive towards Silence. This Maui is able to swing out of danger for now, but Descend to Madness comes through.
You have to play this carefully if your Silence knockup's going to be good. There's the island for some CC immunity, but everyone is surrounding you. What a great play by Angry. Almost helps Peel and get his support out alive. Unfortunately, it is just not enough. Too much used by Thunderhead. They're going to be able to get the kill. Icy and Coast and a little bit of a boxing match. So it's going to be a net neutral, but a positive game for Thunderhead. Killing off Silence. Specifically, actually, this, seeing, as you have said it, I keep cutting off the last letter, but AicyD, he's missing a C.
Yeah.
And then they just changed their name from Thunderhead to Thunderstruck, and they got a whole theme
Wait
going.
a second, that would be so good. Why aren't you in charge of their team?
Of their team.
I don't think you're allowed to be, but if you were, you'd make a great management for Thunderhead.
Or we'd get sued, like the team.
Yeah, because you'd be the manager. You would also be getting sued.
Yeah, I don't want to be. I don't want to be part of that.
Yeah,
They can use the suggestion. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know anything about it. Boxing match between the two carries. Coast walked back in, ate another auto, had me fearing for him. But like I said, no fear sits in his heart. He gets the solo kill on AicyD.
And that's the thing. That was the mental gymnastics of coasting. Okay, first I'm going to ult, get the ult. Then I'm going to come back in with the heart bomb, get the beats down. One more time, the heart bomb nets that stun. And Coast is able to win that one. Silence is able to swing over the Darwin Pillars, but it looks like, once again, the target for aggression. That sprint comes through, but here comes the Typhoon. That should be enough.
That's the knock-up. It's the kill onto Silence, but is it enough for Thunderhead to just get out? Damage has already been good. Adapting gets one return kill. Support for jungle. Feels like a great trade for the Ravens. Silenced, more than happy to die if it means his team can escalate their lead. We see him now, 2,200 gold. Adapting maybe still looking for a little more. They scale a little late game. But one thing that we're seeing, not just in that interaction, Trelly, throughout all of these, has been what a great nuisance Ganesha is to specifically Maui. Like the silence, the root, I mean, the capability at some points to go through player deployables as well with your dash. It just feels like Galadriel here has a matchup that might not be like a direct counter matchup, but it sure is frustrating for Silence.
Yeah, Silence has been just really far up and then getting chased out consistently, and I think that's maybe a bit on Silence's positioning, but also on some good play here from Galadriel, using that Dharma Pillar to try and chase down the Maui, force out the sprint, that sort of thing. It really does start to add up, and right when Coast realizes that AC's alone, he's going to dash in here. Beautiful Aegis, one more on to do it, and that's another solo kill for this Cupid.
I mean, beautiful Aegis might still be an understatement for what that was. Well played.
Oh.
And the fact that you get to live there, Kana, forced to ult over on right. TheRayShadow follows through a teleport. Kana was going for a blue buff invade. But Kana, you didn't die, so we're going to stop talking about you and instead talk about how cool Coast is again, because that was, I mean, exactly what you said. Galadriel's gone the minute Coast realizes it, goes in, trusts himself to get the solo kill, does so, and is able to help his team again find another small, further lead. Before it can get too far, though, Pyromancer picked up by Thunderhead. And that's going to help keep that gold in a much more manageable position. I mean, we mentioned this last game, 2,700, sub 3K right now, but it could easily plateau for the Ravens. And that would be great for Thunderhead, though. We've mentioned it a couple of times. Later the game goes, as much as this, there's a Cthulhu, there's a Morrigan. Good team fight for Thunderhead, same good team fight for the Ravens. A late game Kuang, a late game Tiamat, and now a Primal Fury in their pocket as they seek to make back some of that gold they just lost.
I just think the objective play, besides that Fury we just saw from Thunderhead, has been pretty on point. They know when they have the opportunity to go for the Pyromancer. They know when they have the opportunity to make a pull on the Gold Fury. This time around, though, not on point with understanding that left side of the map, and more so because Coast has a massive lead, right? I don't think you can play on the left side of the map when there is a 2-0 level 15 Cupid that already has Executioner and Kin size. I think Thunderhead knows their strengths, and they know left side of the map probably not the best place to get aggressive. I was curious where Adapting was going to go with this Kuang build, because whenever Kuang jumps back into the meta, usually a new build does as well. It's either full attack speed, full burst. This time around, it's the Book of Thoth and the Soul Gem. So pretty bursty, but also just raw damage. on the side of the Kuang. I want to see exactly how much he's able to do to these carries, right? I think if him and TheRayShadow were able to take a 1v1 in the jungle, that'd be a pretty good damage check as well. But it looks like Kana is consistently just trying to go for that blue buff, and once again, we'll be able to steal it away. Look at Coast dashing into tier 2.
Look, Coast knows what he's about, and right now it has just been 1v1s. And it has been going his way. This Ishtar has not caught a break. 2 deaths, 2 solos. And if Coast was feeling just slightly more confident under the tier 2, it probably would have been a third. 3 levels separating them. As the Fields of Love might need it here. 5 strong on this side of the map. 4 strong. And they're chasing down Coast, but he gets the kill onto Shadow. He's alive and walking away. The team comes to his aid, and they might find a little more. Galadriel executed by the Kuang, and they're chasing for even more. Renegon transforms into the Amaterasu, disengages. The rest of the team gets under the tier 2. But what a turnaround from a 4v1 for Coast to live, and now for once again, this tier 2 on left to be under threat.
Silence, 1 auto will do it. The jolt, perfect, but it looks like the landfall going to keep him alive for 1 extra second. The teleport comes in from ItzMarc, but now Adapting's looking for Renegon. No ultimate available. The Aegis comes through, but that should be the end of the Morrigan with that water illusion. I mean, the Ravens cannot be stopped, and 17 to 12 was the level differential there from TheRayShadow and VaporishCoast. I thought maybe if Coast missed 1 single auto attack, TheRayShadow would be able to get that kill, but I mean, Coast does not miss. The heart bomb, the autos, had the Aegis there, didn't even use it.
The first time I said it was a joke. Second time I said it was a nice callback. This time I mean it legitimately. I don't know that he has fear in his heart.
No,
Like,
he does
how
not.
do you not Aegis in that kind of moment? Simple answer. You're Coast, and you are sure of what your capabilities are, and so far has been proven at 3-0-2. 3-level lead in his lane, but you mentioned 5 levels over the jungler that was chasing him. And not even a moment's hesitation in those fights. And now you're starting to see rotations as well. I mean, you know, you're dominating your lane, but if you start to watch over towards a Fury that's going to be spawning in about a minute and a half, maybe looking over towards a Fire Giant relatively soon if they get a good pick. Thunderhead, about 6,000 gold down. Need to start planting their heels in if they want to push back.
Yeah, I would say so. I think that the Ravens had the opportunity to say, hey, Coast, you can rotate in. Mark is going to get stunned out here, but I don't see Adapting. It looks like trying to go for this kill without the execute is the call. And they might be able to do it. The damage from Angry, this Tiamat, who has been sitting idly by for quite some time, no longer afraid, and has been jumping in. And that's going to be a big power spike as well. This Claron's coin, that Soul Reaver, that type of damage and penetration really does start to add up, especially on tanky targets here like ItzMarc. And finally, the Ravens, 18 minutes in, are going to make their Fire Giant pull.
You know, with a lead like this, they're pretty sure 7,000 gold. And that's pre-Fire Giant. You know, Mifflin, it's always fun to talk about this one. Used to, and I think still does mentally equate a Fire Giant to around 10,000 gold. Just in what it can give you in terms of a power gap and capabilities. They're going to be going for just some lane pressure right now. A lot of gold that's going to start lining the pockets even more so for the Ravens. Tier 2 on right gets taken down. They start to lose their Tier 1 on left. Thunderhead, their bluff gets called. They have to back away. Phoenix on the right-hand side of the map, already half health. Coast getting some free fire out there. Shadow in a good spot to try and fight. Goes in for damage, eats too much in the process. The level 14 Susano has to get out of here. Galadriel saves the day. Eats a lot of damage in the process, so that's 2 TKOs, maybe 3 depending on where Mark goes. Phoenix under pressure again. Ghost gonna get a few more shots. Backdoor's gone because of the minions. Right side Phoenix goes down. Ravens back off.
Yeah, and the Ravens are not playing this slow in the slightest. Remember, that was an 18-minute Fire Giant. You'd think tower, back up, tower, back up. Maybe we break the base a little bit later. But it's just dive the Phoenix. Make sure you're underneath the Phoenix at 19 minutes. Who cares if you don't have enough protection to tank it up? We are getting aggressive. And actually a pretty decent engage there from Thunderhead. I mean, Renegon goes in, gets the stun. TheRayShadow immediately blinks in with the follow-up. And actually, Renegon, instead of turning into the Amaterasu, which has been doing pretty much this whole set, transforms into the Cupid to try and use that Fields of Love aggressively. Now the level 14 Susano setting up a gank onto Angry at the red buff. I'm curious as to how this one's gonna go, but Angry still has that escape and try and back up.
Angry taking some pokes. Silence is stunned. They've got the damage. There's the islands, though, creating some space. The damage return from adapting. Angry is able to get out of there, and instead, it's a 2 pickup for the Ravens. Silence does get taken down. Adapting finally falls, but Kana Coast chasing down and looking for more. It's a 3-for-2 trade. And if they can catch up where they want to, might find a little more. Coast undeterred. He's going to turn this one in. 2v2 in mid. Cthulhu up against the Cupid, the Amaterasu. There's a dash forward. Good stun from Renegon, but you hate your life for it. Angry rotates in. And now Mark is in trouble. Nowhere to go. The D transformation comes through. They've got the deicide. Surrender vote started. But I don't know that they have the capabilities of ending just yet. Definitely looking for another Phoenix if you're the Ravens.
Yeah, they definitely won it. I think, honestly, not a terrible call there from Thunderhead. They were able to get 2 shutdowns, which is something that you really need in this case. The kill was supposed to be on to Angry, though, and Angry actually gets out in that situation. Adapting falling is going to be a big deal. That was a 6-0 kill. And now Midbird being looked at here. Kana able to tank that one up. Should be just fine. 2 Phoenixes have dropped. And Coast Ultimate is still being used here. AC is going to have to back up. Doesn't look like too much damage on the follow-up, but this Fire Giant's still available for another 50 seconds. Might as well grab that last tier 2 in the process. And Adapting joins them. Might even feel confident enough to go for the Phoenix. Adapting's currently on the right side of the map, so they don't even need him, actually. They're going to walk in without their jungler and try and grab the last bird before this Fire Giant runs out in 30 seconds.
30 seconds. They've got the minions. The damage seems to be there. They're going to get it. 3 Phoenixes down now for Thunderhead. Dharma Killers thrown out there. RayShadow as well, dropping his ult. Susano. 0, 3, and 4. Not been having a clean game. Not much you can do about it. 6-1 and 1 is what you see on the opposite side from Adapting. Now that's ignoring the 107, 306, and 404 that they also have on their team, the Ravens. Playing some clean smite right now. Mark steps up, tries to steal away the Fury. Mark just trades out their lives. Doesn't even need the execute for Adapting. And for 50 seconds, it's a 4v5 in favor of the Ravens.
To be fair, in RayShadow's credit, he was looking across at a Cupid that was 5 levels up, right? If you're as a Susano, your job is to try and, keep down these carries that are ahead. But when you're down 5 levels before you even make that gank over to duo lane, it's like, well, what is the call here? The Highland Ravens stepping up towards Titan. They're not waiting for the respawns here. They're going in and Adapting already. Finds the kill on a Renegon, and the base has been broken. Yeah,
at this point, 3v5. You've got 20 seconds before the Cthulhu's back, and they are stepping into the Titan room. Kana eating a lot of damage in return. Nice pullback, and it's going to be a kill for AicyD. Now, can they do anything more? They lose Galadriel. Damage still being thrown onto the Titan coast. Has ult. Fields of Love. Be a big playmaker here. Fire minions are going to get the Phoenix on right. It seems like they're going to fall back here. No Fire Giant, no confidence in their capabilities to end. Respawns coming through. The Ravens are going to reset themselves for the Fire Giant one more time. See what Thunderhead has to offer.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit premature. The Highland Ravens, overwhelming confidence, but you could have at least gotten Fire Giant before going in for the end there. You lose Kana, which isn't going to be the biggest deal because Kana will be back up with teleport available in 15 seconds. And it doesn't seem like Thunderhead can really step up towards this Fire Giant. If they need to make one last stand, now would probably be the time to do it, because any later, and I'm thinking you're facing full builds at this point, Adapting pretty close to finishing up that Bancrofts, and he can go into Nimble Bancrofts or Bancroft's Claw, whichever one he wants at this point. It's clear that full lifesteal with Typhon's Fang is going to be the call here for this Kuang. And the burst damage has certainly been coming through. And now you can see Thunderhead grouped up as 4 on the left side of the map. Maybe trying to make a play here. It's been Renegon as the initiator. So I'm keeping my eyes on the Morrigan. That stealth could be the first target in for this fight. But finally the Ravens are going to pull that Fire Giant. And then they'll be able to go in one more time to try and kill that Titan.
And you got plenty of Fire Minions working their way down lane for you. Right side maybe the most pushed up, left side being defended currently by the Ishtar. 3 leading the way for the Ravens, 2 trailing behind. Adapting, come on, man. I don't think that blue buff is important right now. I think there's a lot of other things you could be doing.
He wants to farm, man. He wants to be level 40 by the end of this game.
Oh, he's stepping up finally. Maybe just the right amount of delay did solo out Rinnegan last time around the right side Phoenix. Doesn't seem like they're going to pull the mid laner out this far a second time. And instead it's going to be the tour around the Phoenixes one more time. Ravens, they took right when it respawned, take mid when it respawned. Maybe now deciding to step into the Titan room. Mark up into the Descent to Madness. Galadriel just erased from the board coast with the damage numbers. Has a double kill and is going to be able to walk this one in 3v5. Let's go ahead and make it 2. Rinnegan barely able to survive long enough to get the ult off. Oh, but it is just not enough for him. It's the full-on deicide, and it's the set for the Ravens.
Adapting 11-1 on this Kuang, but I think Coast, the 6-0 Cupid, also extremely impressive in this match. He's able to find so many solo kills on that side of the map, which opens up a lot of doors, but more specifically, slams doors for the Thunderhead, right? RayShadow says, hey, I kind of want to go to the left side of the map. Oh, there's level 17 Cupid over there. I can't anymore. I can't go to any farm on that side of the map because of how far ahead Coast is.
And not just slamming the door for the jungler. I mean, in the matchup, right? That Ishtar had no hope. There were 2 solo kills. He went for a 3rd at one point.
Yeah.
Not a lot you could do there. Coast feeling himself on the Cupid. Looks really good. The Ravens win this one. Advanced forward. Well, that's going to do it from us. We'll throw it back to the desk and they can break this one down.
It's the statement that the Ravens needed here in game number 2. Game 1, convincing for the squad. Game 2, a bit more convincing. Now the stage really gets set for the number 1 EU and the number 2 EU SCC squad. Still a chance for our SOC teams. They'll drop down to the losers portion of their respective groups, but tough now to climb out of what's now started off their respective phases here. But Myth, I mean, I think an expected result. I think that Thunderhead does deserve some props here in that game 2. Although really swung by the end of it for the Highland Ravens. Again, they were able to find some pushback. It was the Maui that you thought might get caught once or twice. Happened a handful of times to silence in this game. But ultimately, it's a much more complete roster, it feels like, from the Ravens.
Dave, before we jump all the way into the analysis, I want to apologize to you and the fans at home.
To me?
At the start of this desk, all the way at the beginning of the set, you had said, Mifflin, do you expect the pace to continue from set 1 into set 2? And I said no. I thought this would be a bit more competitive.
It was. No. I'm bailing you out. It was a bit more competitive.
The games were longer, but it's because they didn't mercy F6 themselves. I would argue the outcome.
You think just as lopsided?
About so, yeah.
Fair. I mean, I guess right. I mean, we F6'd at 17 to 19 minutes in our first set. Probably would have ended in the next 5 or 6 minutes in those games as well. Coast was soloing AC over on the left side of the map. Look, this Highland Ravens team, again, this is an expected result in the sense that Highland Ravens were a team that was competing with Hex Mambo all phase long. It's a very tight-knit EU SCC, and so the fact that they were still able to separate themselves, find second seed, really speaks to how this team is playing as a whole. It's a team that's really come together recently. Remember, Adapting joins, a bit through the year this year and really makes things look good. Now it's fully synergized with the rest of the team. And look, when Coast is playing this brand of Smite, when Adapting is playing this brand of Smite, you don't need much from the rest of the roster, but the rest of the roster still also looked really, really, really good. So I think a statement win from the Highland Ravens here and build up a bit of momentum for themselves. Really only silenced that gets punished this game, but at 15 assists, I think the Maui's feeling just fine.
Yeah, iSilenced did his job, and it was set up for the rest of the team, and if it dedicates your life to do so, so be it. When you've got an Kuang dropping an 11 bomb on your match, it's probably just going to be fine at the end of the day. And it was. The entirety of the Ravens making a good performance for themselves here. Namely VaporishCoast, though, on this Cupid. I really liked what we saw from him. Some hyper non-usage of the relics, regardless of situation. Decided no matter what I could be doing, I could be beads Agasing, does damage coming at me or the CC, but none of that's worth stopping my own DPS, and at no point did he ever, which will net you 31,000 damage. That fast, though, that's not something you see often.
No, not often at all. Speaking of Kuang in our recent update gets a little nudge in the buff department. Maybe a little Kuang come group stage time, maybe come
Maybe.
Worlds time,
Yeah,
could
maybe.
be.
You know, maybe.
It already looks good for adapting right now. We'll see what the history looks like for Ao Kuang, or the future. History is the past. What the future looks like for Ao Kuang.
History's good.
History is good for Ao Kuang in coming weeks. So now, really, if you're looking at what we wanted to see from both of the number 1 and the number 2 seed here in the SCC, you got it in our first 2 sets of the day. So this is Group B. And we're double elim here in this group. Thunderhead drops to Highland Ravens 0-2. They have another chance, and that'll be the loser of match 4 that they'll play up against. That'll be our final set of the day. Aru Scorpions versus Gilded Gladiators. The winner will move on to play the Highland Ravens. And then the loser will move on to play up against Thunderhead. And that's a last chance type of matchup for those squads. So not out of it yet is Thunderhead. And we jump back over to Group A, where earlier on today, the number 1 EU SCC team, Hex Mambo, beat Personnel in 2 back-to-back F6s.
Real fast.
Very quick, both 15 to 17-minute games. So Personnel awaits the loser of the next match that we'll broadcast today, and that's Styx Ferryman up against the Niflheim Wargs. And, of course, the winner of that one goes on to play Hex Mambo. So Hex Mambo is still the favored team out of this group. I think the Highland Ravens the favored team out of Group B. Styx Ferryman, though, Miff, up against the Niflheim Wargs. These are some teams that were competitive with one another throughout the phase in the EU SEC. And this is where, when you start to get really in the mix, you know, in both NA, which we will see next weekend, and EU here, feels like Hex Mambo and the Ravens pulled away. But when you get into that 4 through 6, teams taking games, taking sets off one another, when you really get in there, that's where the EU SEC felt hyper competitive. So I'm very excited for the next set that we've got for you here today. More SCC action on the road to Worlds coming up next. You don't want to miss it. Stick around.